and I will be discussing the background of the European refugee crisis. The European refugee crisis began when rising numbers of people began arriving in countries under the umbrella of U.S. European Command's area of operations. This crisis has caused a myriad of problems for EUCOM commanders and political leaders within the European Union. The greatest number of people migrating to Europe originate from Syria and Afghanistan, with others coming from areas like South Sudan. These countries have been ravaged by war, with Syrian citizens facing socio-political oppression from President Bashar al-Assad, and those from Afghanistan suffering from the effects of years of continuous war. The citizens of these countries are fleeing in historic numbers in hopes of seeking political and economic asylum. Numbers of refugees fleeing to Europe constitute the largest mass migration seen since World War II. Asylum applications have risen sharply, from the hundreds of thousands to the millions, since 2015 when the crisis began. The journey that these people experience in hopes of a better life is not without its perils, with many having suffered and even dying in their search for asylum. However, the mass migration also has serious implications for host countries and its leaders. Countries within EUCOM's area of operation have faced serious issues with their economies, policies, and, the focus of our report, security. Refugees in EUCOM's AO are susceptible to radicalization by extremist groups, a fact which poses an unacceptable threat to those under the responsibility of EUCOM. Our report aims at reducing the risk of radicalization within the refugee population and ensuring the security of European citizens. Within EUCOM's area of operations, refugee radicalization will be reduced through the effective screening of travelers, improving living conditions within refugee camps, and integrating the refugees into their host countries.
Now we will be moving on to the Plectica map. The main purpose for the Plectica map is to lay out the key stakeholders involved with the system and the relationships between the stakeholders and the problems within the system. Key takeaways to look at in the system is that the main stakeholders to identify are the host countries within the European Union. These include Greece, United Kingdom, France, and Germany. The refugee countries of origin, which include Syria, Turkey, and Afghanistan, and the refugees themselves. Another key takeaway from this Plectica map is that the European Union is currently faced with the problem of too many travelers trying to attempt to receive temporary asylum and pass border control. Another key takeaway is that the refugees are currently faced with several environmental and emotional problems within the actual refugee camps. Finally, host countries are faced with the problem of internal political and economic problems trying to support the refugees. We will now move on to the qualitative value model. The purpose of this model is to show the stakeholders' values in the form of fundamental objective, functions, objectives, and value measures. The fundamental objective for our value model was to reduce the risk of refugee radicalization. Moving down the model, the three functions that we have created are to screen travelers, improve living conditions at the camp, and integrate refugees into host countries. Under screen travelers, we determined that our objectives would be to fingerprint travelers, increase the number of agents at current checkpoints, and create more checkpoints. We decided upon these objectives because we believe that fingerprinting of travelers would help the EUCOM better monitor travelers in the AOR, and that increasing checkpoints and agents would help expedite the screening process. Under improved living conditions, our objectives were to install plumbing, provide recreational structures, and build schools. We decided upon these because we believe that educating refugees and creating recreational structures would help increase the quality of life and help the time fly by, hopefully deterring them from joining any terrorist organizations. Finally, under integrate refugees into host countries, we have hire teachers with language skills, provide cash assistance, and provide health insurance. Our rationale behind these objectives was to ensure that once refugees enter a new country, they are prepared to live in that new country and they are satisfied with their living condition.
My name is Jasmine Jackson. I will be discussing our candidate solution generation and selection process. Solution generation. To meet the functions that EUCOM requires the system to meet, the top 6 values listed from highest importance to lowest importance are fingerprint travelers, number of agents at each checkpoint, install plumbing for bathhouses, provide cash assistance for the refugees' initial time in the new country, build school structures, and hire teachers with language skills. Depicted in the swing matrix, fingerprinting travelers was valued as the most important issue influencing refugee radicalization, with the highest variability based off of input from stakeholder interviews. These objectives were combined to create several solutions that were further narrowed down by referencing UCOM's needs, wants, and desires for the system. The solutions were generated from combining several objectives in a Zwicky's morphological box. The solutions were further narrowed down by referring to UCOM's needs, wants, and desires for the system. For example, an initial solution suggested creating more checkpoints, installing plumbing for bathhouses, and hiring teachers with language skills. However, this solution was eliminated because countries already have established checkpoints and do not want to fund more checkpoints. Following the feasibility screening, 4 solutions were determined. These solutions were evaluated through a quantitative matrix and a cost analysis by analogy. The quantitative value modeling used raw data from various potential solutions and an ideal and baseline threshold. From this data, value functions and corresponding graphs were created to better model the trends indicated by the data. Solution values were created after utilizing the swing matrix, created based on stakeholder feedback on functions that were highly valued to them. The resulting total values indicate the best solution based on the stakeholder value of certain functions from the swing matrix. Solution 1. Fingerprinting travelers, installing plumbing for bathhouses, and providing cash assistance for the refugees' first initial months in the country had the highest total value. Cost analysis by analogy was used to estimate the cost of each solution. Analogies were used because the new system was primarily a combination of existing subsystems that had recent historical cost data available. For example, to estimate the cost of installing plumbing in refugee camps, data from the World Health Organization Reference Center on Community Water Supply, or the IRC, was used. The IRC studied the cost of water services in refugee camps in Ethiopia and Chad in 2015. This data was modified to account for the maintenance costs of plumbing for 3 years. Additionally, to estimate the cost of providing cash assistance to the refugees, the United States already has a program that gives money to refugees. These amounts were adjusted to account for 3 years. Based on cost analysis by analogy and the quantitative model's total value, UCOM should fingerprint travelers, install plumbing for bathhouses, and provide cash assistance for the refugees' initial months in the new country. This solution has had the lowest estimated 3-year cost, $6.5 billion. Against the other solutions from the quantitative model, this solution had the highest value score, indicating that it is the best solution to achieve UCOM's earlier stated values that complete the required system function. We will continue to monitor the system's success and make the necessary modifications. If UCOM has any concerns about these recommendations, please direct questions to the point of contact.